Hey y'all, welcome back. Today we're checking out former MI5, MI6 director on how to become a spy, what the public doesn't know, and new threats.
I'm David Bickford, and I was the former legal director for MI5 and MI6.
Hello, David.
And people were arrested with the bombs on them.
How much is the public unaware of?
90%. Many sort of Russians, Chinese, go to universities to get information. Well, I think that's going operational, and I wouldn't go into it. In the days when I was operating, the biggest problem were people who were fantasists, to convert intelligence into evidence. I think fake news is a massive threat. Putin has his eye on Ukraine, and he's not going to stop. The only way he will stop is if the West stop him.
David Bickford. Okay. Hang on. What's the difference between MI5 and MI6? What was that? MI5 investigates matters of national security in the UK. MI6, now SIS, gathers intelligence pertinent to the UK's internet. Oh, okay. MI5 is like the FBI in the United States, and MI6 is like the CIA in the United States. International, domestic, got it. Y'all be sure to go to Joe and like and subscribe.
Well, I was asked to join MI5 and MI6 as their legal director at a time when the agencies were going through a transition from countering communism in the Cold War to countering terrorism at home and also internationally. So it was a very, very interesting period to join the agency.
Yeah, that's interesting. In the 80s, it was all about Russia, and then it became the Middle East. Now it's kind of getting back to Russia, y'all.
When I first joined, the agencies had no legislative base. There was no law that governed them in essence. So the first thing I had to do was to introduce legislation to found the activities of MI5 and MI6, and that legislation governed how they behaved. The next thing was, of course, the intelligence agents, because they're so good, are going around, they're gathering all sorts of information about targets. Well, how do you get that information to court? There was no ability at that time to get evidence to court. In fact, terrorists weren't being prosecuted. Very interesting. We used eavesdropping evidence, and the terrorists were prosecuted. MI5 is responsible for internal security. MI6 is responsible for gathering information to protect the United Kingdom. Yes, I mean, it was responsible, but you don't go into that job unless you're fully prepared for taking the responsibility and dealing with recruiting the agents.
Hang on. So before he got involved, there was no law governing MI5? Or there was no way for the intelligence that MI5 and MI6 gathered to be put into courts to be used to prosecute terrorists? Is that what he's saying? This is already beyond me. I don't think I could be an MI5 spy, y'all. MI5, call me. Or would it be MI6?
The responsibility and dealing with recruiting the agents who are incredibly competent. The first thing you look for is integrity. If you send an agent out into the field to get them to meet up with an agent, for instance, or even to enter a house to put an eavesdropping device there, you have to trust that when they come back, they'll tell you the truth about what happened. Although they might be going out into the field lying and cheating to get the information they want, when they come back to the agency, they have to be absolutely honest about what they've done and what information they've received. If they're not, then of course the whole operation can get skewed. Innocent people can get hurt. The recruitment process is...
Wow, so they're looking for people who will lie through their teeth to get information. But when it comes to reporting back to their superiors, they need absolute truth. I feel like that would require some really strong patriotism. Is that the word? Loyalty to the crown, or I don't know. It's strange to think that they're actually going around bugging people's houses, you know? That seems so, old school. Well, I guess now they would just hack somebody's phone or computer. I wonder if they still bug places, you know?
Get skewed, innocent people can get hurt. The recruitment process is very, very intrusive. When anybody joins the agencies, their life is looked into from beginning before they join, and it's stripped absolutely bare. There's nothing the agencies don't know about you before they hire you. That allows them to be able to understand who you are, how you're going to operate, and therefore it's much easier for the agents themselves to work. They're being trusted.
That also means they can blackmail you, right? They know what you're doing. They know what you've done.
Easier for the agents themselves to work. They're being trusted. Everybody's open to apply. There is no discrimination, sex, religion, anything like that, disability, whatever. There's no discrimination there. Anybody can apply, but the process is very, very cumbrous, and as I say, the individual is looked at very, very closely. The things they actually look for are, first of all, integrity, absolutely essential, as I've said before. The second is determination. You've got to be able to go on and on and on until the job's completed. And third is lateral thinking. It's very, very important to be able to think laterally.
Hang on. Why didn't the producers help this man with his wardrobe? He's having trouble with his collar. This blazer doesn't fit. I don't think these are his clothes, y'all. I think he's pulling one over on us right now. He's spying on these video producers. Integrity is the first
Absolutely
thing.
essential, as I've said before. The second is determination. You've got to be able to go on and on and on until the job's completed.
Persistence.
And third is lateral thinking. It's very, very important to be able to think laterally, not down a straight line. There's also very important the analytical capability.
What do you mean? What do you mean exactly by lateral thinking? Like, how does this fit into everything else? What does that mean exactly? Lateral thinking is a manner of solving problems using an indirect and creative approach via reasoning that is not immediately obvious. Synonymous to thinking outside the box, it involves ideas that may not be obtainable using only traditional step-by-step logic. Okay. Yeah, abstract thinking.
Not down a straight line. There's also very important the analytical capabilities of individuals. I've always said it, women are very, very good at that. They're able to think of a number of different things at once and actually process that information and bring it to a conclusion. Men think slightly differently, in my experience. Oh gosh, yes. Yeah, I mean, they have a sense of humour. If you're under that sort of pressure that they are under, their sense of humour is very important. They live like normal people. 90%. Why? They're operating in secret. If they don't operate.
So people, he's saying 90% of what happens people don't know about.
If they don't operate in secret, then obviously they're not doing their job properly. There has to be very, very detailed information about that particular individual. Not only does the information come in, it has to be corroborated by a separate source before the agencies can actually start targeting an individual. Therefore, it's very labor intense, it's very expensive. Therefore, so much of this work goes on that the public never get to hear of. They get to hear of the trials, they also get to hear of the things that go wrong. And those are the two elements that they get to hear of. Otherwise, all this stuff is going on. They have no idea that it's actually progressing in order to defend the state. But there were a number that
That's kind of creepy, isn't it? Very creepy. Are any of y'all MI5 or MI6 spies? Comment below. Tell us your code name. Let us know. No one's going to find out. No one watches this. No one reads the comments.
They get to hear of. Otherwise, all this stuff is going on. They have no idea that it's actually progressing in order to defend the state. But there were a number that I know for a fact.
Oh, how many attacks are foiled? These
in order to defend
these question
the state.
graphics are really confusing. They're right behind my closed captions, which I need to understand this British guy. How many attacks are foiled?
No idea that it's actually progressing in order to defend the state. But there were a number that I know for a fact that were foiled. And people were arrested with the bombs on them. Cyber, fake media.
Oh, wait, what was it? What type of espionage takes place in the modern day?
Many sort of Russians, Chinese go to universities to get information. They'll try and recruit people to get information. The same old sort of spying goes on, but now it's far more sophisticated with the use of social media and cyber. Russia's a very, very...
Interesting. So they go into universities? Russians and Chinese go to universities to get information. They'll try and recruit people to get information. So are they enrolling as students? Is that what he's saying? Or getting jobs as professors? Or do they just show up as a tourist? Suspicious, yeah.
The same old sort of spying goes on, but now it's far more sophisticated with the use of social media and cyber. Russia's a very,
What does it say? How big of a threat are China and Russia?
very big threat. They're pushing the boundaries, one can see that. I see today there was a news squib that they're training for tactical nuclear weapons, or whether that's true or not, I don't know. Right. Normally that sort of thing is a scare tactic by Putin. But Putin has his eye on Ukraine and he's not going to stop. The only way he will stop is if the West stop him, and they have to support Ukraine absolutely to the hilt. China is tagging on Russia's tails. They're arming them, they're doing deals with them in return for Russian oil. China wants Taiwan. China wants to disrupt the West so that it can become more economically strong. So again, China has to be watched very, very closely. Well, I think it's...
Wow. This is scary. With all the stuff that our current United States leadership is doing, it does seem like we're on Russia's side now. Doesn't it? There's gotta be a P-tape out there. There's gotta be a P-tape. How does it feel when an attack gets through? Oh.
It's just gutted. I mean, if somebody's hurt, real sadness, a sense of failure, whether or not something failed, because it may very well be completely out of one's control. Something slipped in that just wasn't on the radar at all. There are two problems. The first is manpower, and in order to keep going with all the targets you've got, it's just not possible. And finance. You have to have a budget.
Oh, yeah.
And if you're following one target and that target sort of fizzles out and goes into limbo, as it were, then another target may come along and you'll switch those resources to that target as being more promising. And quite sometimes it may be that the target you've lost sight of actually goes ahead and does succeed in some sort of attack.
Oh, wow. See, that's interesting. I feel like the United States, the CIA and the FBI, like they don't have a budget. It's just whatever you need. Take the money. But these guys are dealing with a budget, or resources in general, right? People and money.
And that is absolutely gutting. In terms of...
What? Who is the most powerful figure when making decisions?
Intelligence decisions, I think the Director General of MI5 and C in MI6,
that makes sense.
They're the people who have to make the decisions that protect, because their job is just that, it's to protect. The Prime Minister has to sanction some operations. They're incredibly delicate. Well, the process is questioned.
What interrogation methods are allowed to be used? Waterboarding.
Well, the process is questioning, and the individuals who are expert in this are incredibly clever, using the normal methods of interrogation, talking and all the rest of it, is far, far more successful than any sort of Guantanamo Bay nonsense. It's absolutely outrageous that any Western state could be involved in torture or inhuman treatment. I think the most difficult part...
Yeah, and we are. All kinds of stuff going on that we don't know about, I think.
In torture or inhuman treatment.
What was the hardest part of the job?
think the most difficult part of the job was trying to convert intelligence into evidence. When it goes to the judge, finally, you have to be certain in your own mind that there won't be anything there that is going to be useful to the defence, but you've got enough to succeed in the prosecution. Oh, what a shame.
Is it like the films?
No. James Bond is brilliant. I mean, let's face it. But he goes off on his own, causes chaos and knocks over the whole world before he comes to a conclusion. There's one person living, and that's James Bond, really, at the end. Intelligence work is very, very different. It's massive teamwork. And you do not send anyone out into the field until you have planned that operation very carefully indeed. Try not to feel...
How do you and the agents feel when you watch James Bond?
Have planned that operation very carefully indeed. Try not to feel smug. I love it. No, I mean, who wouldn't? Putting Russia into square brackets for the moment, organised crime, that's
Wait. Why can't they just say the question? Why they gotta write it in this weird... What is the biggest threat facing the UK? All right.
Putting Russia into square brackets for the moment, organised crime, that's really insidious. Fraud, online fraud, that's getting bigger. I think fake news is a massive threat. Because it's new, people will believe more of it than they would once they get used to the idea of fake news. How are you going to stop fake news? Well, I know there are a lot of people looking into that at the moment. So I wouldn't like to predict it, but I think we're going to be living with it for some time, and I think we're going to have to get used to being able to suss out the difference between what's fake and what isn't.
Yeah.
I mean, in the days when I was operating, the biggest problem were people who were fantasists, who used to sort of come up with some story, and that would waste time running it down to find out that actually it was a complete fantasy. And that was annoying because you're wasting money and time of officers.
Okay. Oh, well, what an ending. I don't think I could do it, y'all. Oh, y'all.
These are MI5 officers.
I do think there's a perception of the type of person that works for MI5 or the intelligence community in general, and I don't think I necessarily fit into that box.
Yeah, that's interesting. You know what, though? If I knew her, I would probably recognize her voice, and I would probably recognize her silhouette. You know? I could figure out who these people are, y'all. Easy.
This is Karina, who agreed to speak to me a few days after the terror attack on London Bridge last November, when the agency's secretive operations were once again being scrutinised.
So this is what that guy was talking about. The public only hears about the trials and then the failures. They don't know all the good stuff they're doing.
The sort of spontaneity with which we see attacks happen now is something else that we have to adapt to.
So she's saying these terrorist attacks are becoming more spontaneous? Like they have to plan less and they're more surprising? That's not good, right? And then the right-wing terrorists have a whole other way of communicating and operating? Interesting.
She says she doesn't live the swashbuckling life portrayed in the spy movies.
You know, I have a normal life outside, I have a family, I get home, and so my world's taken up with bathing children, feeding children, putting them to bed.
So she's dealing with all this extreme stuff at work, and then she's got to go home and forget about it. Just to be sane. That would actually make a really great movie, I think. Has that been done? It's probably been done, right? Show a spy at work doing some crazy stuff and then going home to her children, bathing them, being a mum. Someone should make a version of The Office, but they're the MI5. Wouldn't that be funny? David Brent. It's crazy to think that there are spies walking the streets, and we don't know who they are. But they're watching. They're listening. Might be watching this right now. Hey, spy. What's up? Thanks for your service. I'm harmless. Don't worry about me. When was that London attack? I don't remember hearing about that. Oh, okay. This was a while ago. A terrorist vehicle ramming and stabbing took place in London. A van was deliberately driven into pedestrians on London Bridge and then crashed on Borough High Street just south of the River Thames. The van's 3 occupants then ran to the nearby Borough Market area and began stabbing people in and around the restaurant and pubs. That's just chaos. They were shot dead by Metropolitan Police and City of London Police and were found to be wearing fake explosive vests. 8 people were killed. Whoa. And 48 were injured, including members of the public and 4 unnamed police officers who attempted to stop the assailants. The attackers were armed with 12-inch kitchen knives. They also prepared fake explosive belts by wrapping water bottles in gray tape. One man fought the 3 attackers with his fists in the Black and Blue Steakhouse, shouting, "F you, I'm Millwall," giving members of the public who were in the restaurant the opportunity to run away. He was stabbed 8 times in the hands, chest, and head. He underwent surgery and was taken off the critical list June 4th. Did he survive? Oh my god. Oh my gosh, y'all. Yeah, this seems like such a basic, small operation with just 3 people involved that how could MI5 or MI6 figure that, like, there's no way they could have known, you know? It seems like these 3 guys just kept it all to themselves. There's no way. Damn. Yeah, being an MI5 or MI6 spy is probably a thankless job, you know, because we don't hear about all the stuff they do that's good. Wow. If you're an MI5 or MI6 spy, thank you for your service once again. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I hope we remain on the same side. I hope we remain allies. It's hard to know with current leadership. Oh my god. Anyway, yeah. Well, I'd like to thank my patrons. I'd like to thank my Buy Me a Coffee folks. Thank you all for watching this with me, and I'll see you next time. Later.